Hey everybody, welcome into Bite Time. Harry McCullough here. It's time to catch you up on Lafourche Parish with the Lafourche Parish president, Archie Chaisson. The third. I didn't realize you were the third, man.
That's right. That's right.
So you got three Archies.
Yeah, we did at one time. Big Archie's going
So
now.
they didn't call you Trey?
They did.
Oh, okay.
So all my family knows me as Trey, yeah.
I got you. All right.
Yeah. And if you had the roast Saturday for Bless Your Heart, you got the backstory behind that, right?
It wasn't just from shooting three-pointers.
That's right. That's
So,
right.
All right, let's talk a little bit about recovery. We're coming up on the anniversary of this storm. It seems like, hey, we're doing pretty good. Then you think, oh, we're right in the middle of it, So,
Yeah.
let's knock on wood for sure. But how are we doing? Everything's kind of coming together, right?
Yeah, we've been talking about that a lot, and I think over the next couple of weeks we'll talk a lot about the 1 year anniversary. And as you continue to drive down the bay, it gets a little bit better each time. The Galliano Fresh Market, which was the old IGA in Galliano, had their grand opening today, so they're finally back up and running. Some 11 and a half months after Ida. So we're seeing that slow progress. But you drive down there, or if you happen to fly down there, you still see some blue roofs. You still see, homes that are gutted. You still see the trailers. We still have probably about 3,500 people still in some sort of temporary housing between the state's program and FEMA's mobile homes. So we're trying to work through that process with the state about, we know those programs are going to come to an end at some point, especially the state's program with the RV campers. That's going to come to a close quicker than the FEMA mobile homes will. But how are we transitioning those people out? Do we have enough affordable housing for them to go to, whether they can rent or buy? Do they have their own plans to move in with family and friends or whatever if that camper goes away? So we're slowly working through those processes, because what we don't want to have happen is that FEMA decides to pull a plug on reimbursing the state for all these campers and the maintenance of them, and then we have no place for these people to go. So there have been some case management that has been happening over the course of the last several months. That's going to continue to go on probably through the end of the year, as we kind of work them through some sort of permanent housing, whether it's their own unit. And we have seen that. We have on the FEMA side, we have somewhere, I think we're over 100 now, of people who have actually moved out of FEMA trailers. So we're slowly getting there. We know people are still battling their insurance. We know people are still dealing with gutting their homes or rebuilding their homes, and supply chain issues and all the other fun things we see in our everyday world.
Labor, right? Yeah.
The labor shortages. So as we continue to do that, we're going to see those numbers pucker down a little bit, I think. So we're getting there.
Hazard mitigation. We was talking with Chris Pulaski from Terrebonne Parish. I'm sure y'all got the same kind of programs going over there, and that's some of the things that have to be evaluated. Do we have to go above the flood levels? How much is the house damaged? That kind of stuff. But he was also talking about some of these things they just don't happen, right? Yeah. They're still closing the books on some from Hurricane Gustav, which was 2008. So I guess the ball rolls, but it doesn't roll very fast sometimes. So I guess you're trying to put some grease under that a little bit, I guess.
That's it. And that's not only, last week we got a huge announcement of about $50 million coming from the Hazard Mitigation Grant Program. A lot of that's going to go to homes that were substantially damaged, that people now have to rebuild and meet those elevation requirements that they probably can't afford to do it on their own. So a tranche of that money is going to go to them. A tranche of it's going to go into our pump stations and drainage projects and programs and stuff like that. But you're still talking 2 years or so before we get to the point where we're ready to execute some of those projects, not because we aren't ready and not because our engineers and our architects aren't ready, just the paperwork and the process that we have to go through. And, I joked with some FEMA staff a couple of weeks ago that if I could rent a DeLorean and go back and find the guy who screwed this up the first time, that put all this red tape, I'd kind of, I'd whip his tail a little bit, because it's put such a burden on government that it takes so long to get some of these projects out. And you're right, we're still doing projects from Gustav and Ike, that are open projects that we haven't completed 7, 8, 9 years later. So it's frustrating, and I know it's going to be frustrating for those homeowners as we start to sign them up and say, look, we're going to have this money. We know you're rebuilding, but we're going to elevate your home at some point. And then, every 6 months they're going to call and go, where are we? Where are we? Where are we? And you kind of got to slow roll that ball for them and temper those expectations. But it's going to do a whole lot of good. I don't think that's the last pot of money we're going to see, whether it be through hazard mitigation or through the community development block grant, or CDBG programs that we call them from the state. Some of that's going to go into our match to FEMA and pay back that 10%. So hopefully we get everything at little and no cost to the local taxpayers, right? But it's all our money at the end of the day at the federal level. But I'm hopeful that we start to see some more of that money flow in from Pat Forbes and the Office of Community Development. We've had a lot of conversations with him over the last couple of weeks. There was a pot of money set aside that the legislature did this last year for the 4 most affected parishes, about 33 million set aside. So we're working through those funding formulas and working with the delegation, our local state reps and senators, to make sure we have all of our damage assessments in there, make sure we have as much money as we know we can claim, so we get the most bang for our buck on that funding formula. So be a lot of spreadsheets happening, a lot of abacus work happening in the next couple of weeks as we try to put pen to paper and figure out how we're going to spend some of this money.
Right, right, and it's just funny how it overlaps, and then while you're waiting, there's another storm happens, and you're doing it all over again. So I guess that's part of government. And look, you gotta be able to justify what you're spending. Either you just don't want people, doing whatever they do. But yeah, when you got people involved, it's not that easy. We also had Christine Russell. She's finally back up and running, doing courts, schools back in order. So things are kind of turning the corner a little bit.
And we're all getting back to normal, and we're all working through those same things. I know Superintendent Martin's still working on schools. If you go to downtown Thibodeau to the court of the DA's office, you still see the white shrink wrap on top of government buildings, because we're still in the same boat. And I say that as much as I can, because people think in government we're in this ivory tower, right? But we're fighting our insurance, we're fighting FEMA to be able to do these projects as well. And again, those supply chain issues, and we try to keep all of our business local, so we're using all local architects and engineers, but so is Terrebonne Parish, so is the diocese, so is the school board. So these guys are pumping out as much work as they can, and I feel sorry for them in a lot of cases, because you got people like me and the DA and the superintendent and everybody else pushing these guys to pump out as much work, and we're trying to get as much of it done as quick as we can.
Right. Last time we'd seen you, you were going to Colorado. I know you had a few local delegation. I know a couple of folks from Terrebonne, Guidry was there, and a couple other folks were there. Productive. I know it's one of the big lobbying efforts for local government that can be used to go to Washington, right?
Yeah, it was a good probably 4 days up there. The National Association of Counties is the largest lobbying group that we have outside of the little industry groups, so whether you're an engineer or a surveyor or whatever, right? But we did a few things while we're up there. Councilwoman Julia Fisher Cormier from St. Charles Parish had some resolutions on the flood insurance program, which I'll complain about in a minute, and got that through NACO. We did a lot of work on the oil and gas side, renewing offshore oil and gas leases, things like the RISE Act that Senator Cassidy and Senator Whitehouse are working on. Senator Kennedy is a co-sponsor, and I know he's in town this week, but going to develop how that Go Mesa revenue gets spent. And then on the offshore wind side, how those revenues from offshore wind lease blocks are going to come to the states, just like we get the oil and gas revenue. So it was funny, while we were up there, Senator Manchin, who's in charge of the Energy Committee on the Senate side, actually had a markup of the bill. So we knew what was going on while we were in Colorado. So it actually helped sell the bill to the group. And we didn't get everything we wanted. We were asking for 50% instead of 37.5% on the oil and gas revenue side from offshore. We were asking them to lift the cap. There's an arbitrary cap that was placed on it, unlike the onshore states. And then we were looking to open up the lease blocks that were available to get revenue off of. We got one of the three, which was a good thing. We eliminated the cap. So if you paid attention to the news the last couple of weeks, that equates to about another $1.9 billion that could come to Louisiana. And in Louisiana,
it was going to the feds, right?
I was going to the feds. Right. So we could use it for hurricane protection, coastal restoration, things like that, dedicated to what Chairman Klein and CPRA does. And a lot of that money goes to Marganja to the Gulf, goes to Wendell and Dwayne and Reggie in the 3 levee districts. So we're really pumped up about that extra money. So we got that through there. So now, as the bill moves toward a final passage, we have the entire weight of the National Association of Counties behind it, which is a huge thing when it comes to lobbying other states and other delegations, because they know this entire body is behind it. We were joined by a couple of councilmen, Councilman Jones, Councilman Wendell, and Councilwoman Chaisson were up there. So they got a taste. I think that was their first annual conference. So they got a taste of what we do up there, how we work the process. There's a huge Gulf Coast parishes and caucus group that met while we were up there to talk about things that relate to the coast. There's 2 county judges that are basically parish presidents from Texas who are chairing the group this year. So I think we're going to be making a trip out to Texas to their coast, and we're going to rotate the states as we go forward and do kind of field trips so they can see what we all do on the coast. So it was a good few days. The one thing I will say in the battle we really fought was on the flood insurance side, and how do we deal with this whole new risk rating 2.0 system. We traveled to Denton last week to FEMA Region 6 with Dwayne Bourgeois from the Levee District to not only talk about the parish's flood maps that we are still fighting. We've been fighting this since 2008. We sued FEMA. There was a process called LAMP. That was a levee assessment mapping procedure that came out of those lawsuits that were supposed to take into account all the levees, all the drainage infrastructure, all that fun stuff. So fast forward through that whole process, right before Ida hits, we get a new set of flood maps. And the maps are still wonky. They show flood zones in places that historically have never flooded. While they're taking into levee account, they're now saying, well, the bayou Lafourche might overflow because we're treating it like a river. Well, there's a pump station down Donaldsonville that we can turn off so it doesn't overflow, right? They haven't taken into account the drainage infrastructure that we've improved so we can move more water in these intense rain events. So now we're fighting that battle. But it coalesces in the race rating 2.0 because what it does is it takes people who historically have not been in flood zones and put them in there now at these arbitrary rates.
Because of proximity to
Proximity to the water, the coast, wherever you are. So we're seeing people that historically have not had flood insurance that are now seeing $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 premiums, or people who had preferred risk policies that are in X zones, BC zones that are not special flood hazard areas that are going from $400, $500 to $3,000 and $4,000 and $5,000.
they're going to drop them.
They're going to drop them. So we keep trying to tell that to FEMA that, Risk Rating 2.0 is a program that is supposed to make the flood insurance program solvent, right? Because it's now based on risk, not just whatever your flood zone elevation is. But you're going to have more people drop out of the program.
People, right.
So you're gonna shrink the risk pool instead of growing it. And they don't seem to quite understand that. So we've been working with FEMA Region 6. President Dove and I have said this over and over again to the FEMA administrator as she's come down after Hurricane Ida. We're getting word that the DHS Secretary Mayorkas is supposed to make a trip down here in the next couple of weeks. So we're going to have some time to meet with him. So we're going to bring that up to him as well. So it's been a weird play. And then when you think about, the last couple of days, we've realized that as this Inflation Reduction Act has come to be, Senator Manchin was actually successful in getting some legislation put into the bill that says before the federal government can do offshore wind leases or solar leases onshore, that they have to have an onshore and offshore oil and gas lease. So that's some good news, right? For the oil and gas guys and for the future of the industry as we try to get some predictability in it for those guys. So as we're fighting flood insurance, we're still also fighting the oil and gas fight to try to bring more revenue to it.
Yeah, interesting that you're talking about that bill that just passed. It was the anti-inflation bill, and then as soon as it came out, it was a climate reduction act. Which is, again, you're like, wait, did we just miss something?
Yeah,
So
there's a whole bunch of stuff, and NACO is doing, again, why we love NACO so much. Tomorrow there's 4 or 5 webinars throughout the day that you can join in on. It talks about the 5 different aspects of that inflation bill. The one we're most interested in is, of course, the energy one for energy independence and the climate change that they want to talk about. But it'll be interesting to see how that plays out over the course of the next few months and weeks.
Yeah. So FEMA will be down here. You said you'll have the secretary down here?
Yeah. We're getting word that he's coming down in the next couple of weeks, and they're looking for a local place to meet with local elected officials. So we're hopeful that FEMA's boss will be in town,
right,
and we can make some progress there as well.
School starts now. You got the university. You got a lot of stuff going on in Lafourche Parish. Fall festivals, a lot of stuff going on.
That's right. It's crazy the amount of stuff that coalesced all at once, right? We have a ton of road work happening right now in Lafourche. Some of it's ours. We have 2 road projects that are getting ready to go to construction in both the northern and central and southern parts of the parish in our 2 road districts. DOTD is currently overlaying the road between Raceland and the St. Charles community on 308. That was a pretty rough patch. DOTD is also on Highway 1 between the Country Club and Klein Peter and Brandywine doing it's a safety project that's going to include some turn lanes to make it a little bit easier to turn in and out the subdivision. The residents are not too thrilled about it, but we're trying to work through that with DOTD to make sure that it's not going to cause more accidents than what we saw before with the turn lanes and people trying to come out of the Country Club or out of Brandywine, out of Klein Peter. So as they're doing it, we're going back to the traffic engineers and double checking to make sure nothing's really out of whack.
You got a bridge in Valentine?
Bridge in Valentine. We got $2.6 million last week from the RAISE grant program, which was part of the Infrastructure and Job Act through President Biden. We worked very closely with Senator Cassidy, Congressman Scalise, and Congressman Graves to get that money. That was a weird project. It started back in 2020 with Reggie Bagala, who was our state rep at the time, secured $1 million from DOTD, from Secretary Wilson. So we got moving on it. The parish bonded out some money to make up the difference that we knew we'd need. And in the meantime, the IIJA bill happens. There's some money opens up. So we worked with GIS engineering to say, let's go chase some of that money. You're already designing the bridge. Let's just throw it out there and see what happens. And lo and behold, $2.6 million later last week is going to allow us to claw back some of the money we had in the project and go do some other road and bridge and drainage projects with it. So hopefully, I'm hopeful. We met with the Coast Guard this morning about some permitting for it. So I'm hopeful by the end of the fall we have some plans and specs ready to go out to bid, and that we're under construction before the end of the year, but if not, right in the beginning of 2023. We're almost neck deep in a project to build a scenic overlook under Highway 90 near the Tourist Commission. Believe it or not, the project's about 11 years old. We finally got it off the ground last year. It's going to have a kind of a walkway over by Lafourche, so you can look at the beauty of it, the natural by. We've done a lot of cleanup work around Highway 90 to make it look better, taking out some old trash trees, keeping the grass cut. And then it'll have a stairway and a floating dock component. So, as more people are using the bayou for boating access, now that the Weir and Thibodeau is going, things like that, kayakers are using it. We'll have a place you can dock your boat and then come up on the bank and either walk to the Tourist Commission office or during a fair and festival, you can use it. I think the two fairs that use the Central Market Pavilion that we have right there are really pumped up to do pirogue races during their fairs. So it'll be a good thing there. So a whole bunch of good stuff happening. We're going to get here closely. I think the first festival is the Hurricane Fest at the Cutoff Youth Center. That Delin puts on toward the toward the middle of September. I think it's I'm gonna forget the dates, but it's the middle of the end of September. It's gonna be the kickoff, and then from there you have La Fête de Vieux Temps, you have the Chac Bay Firemen's Festival, you have French food. So we're gonna have a stretch of probably about 5 weekends where we're gonna have fairs and festivals all over happening. So it's good to see things come back. The port, of course, is up and running. Nicholls State University is going back to classes. And as much as we talk about the port getting back up and running, Nicholls got back up and running just as fast, providing those educational opportunities to the kids to keep some normalcy after the hurricane, and working really hard on those workforce projects with Nicholls and Fletcher so we can look at the demand of things we need either in the industry or drafters or carpenters or electricians and plug those people into the workforce, knowing that we have the labor shortages we have. So there have been a lot of discussions the last few months about workforce development, how we kind of speed that process up. We've been working from a parish government perspective to be a Lafourche or a Louisiana development ready community. So as people are looking for site selections and new businesses are looking at places, we have everything ready to go. We have a package ready to go. So we're close to wrapping up that process. I'm hopeful that we get that designation in about the next month. So we're gonna do a big thing with Secretary Pearson up at LED to let the public know what we've been working on and that we've attained that goal. There's not too many parishes that have. So it's kind of accreditation standpoint that between higher ed and everything else we're doing with our business community, economic development, we're ready to go and expand businesses. So
yeah, how cool is it to start talking about other stuff, as I talking to you and Jared Martin, y'all took office like 2 minutes before COVID hit, right? And then so you had 2 years of COVID and a storm. So this, what you were elected to do and what you're finally into doing your third or fourth year in the office is now kind of being a regular parish president.
Yeah, it's weird to think we're almost, we're over halfway through 2022. You got 1 year left in office in 2023 before those re-election things happen. And it's weird that we still keep having these conversations about, well, we're getting back to normal. And every time we do that, something else happens.
Right,
so,
right, true.
We had 4 bouts of COVID and then a hurricane. But it is good to talk about all the things that we should be focused on, that we've been able to somewhat focus on through everything we've been dealt. But that's finally all, everybody's starting to see the light at the end of the tunnel as we get back into school, as we get back into projects. We were having some conversations this morning. We're neck deep in the budgeting already for 2023. So now we got to start meeting with our councilman to figure out, all right, what are your priorities again for next year, knowing that we're finally starting to piece together some of the stuff we've been working on for the past couple of years. So it's good times in Lafourche. The stars are aligning and sun keeps shining.
And a lot, you're right. Budget's going to be different, right? Going forward, we're not going to have, funds coming out of Washington and Baton Rouge quite as much, it'll be a little different time. So it is wild to imagine. It's been a long time, but it's good to be able to walk around, a fireman's fair and shake hands with people, right?
That's
and
right.
hug people like you should or whatever, and be a regular politician.
Everybody's bidding on auction
Do some
items.
shells in somebody's driveway as opposed to, worrying about all that other stuff. So, it's been a different time. So, man, we appreciate it. Thanks for coming by. Thanks for the update. And anything going on? You going on any trips?
No, we're not. We're going to be home.
Singapore?
No, we're going to be home for a little while. I don't think we're going to be making any overseas trips anytime soon.
All right, Archie Chaisson. Thanks so much, man. We appreciate it. We'll be right back with more Bite Time after this.